Hi, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, wherever you may be turning in from for today's Technical Takeoff. Welcome to Technical Takeoff Day 4 and our AMA on securing and managing AI and agentic capabilities in Windows. My name is Kevin Sheehan. I'm a product manager in the Windows MDM stack, and today going to be talking about the capabilities that we have and we are planning to have for being able to manage AI, taking advantage of the capabilities in Windows. So let's get started. Post your questions now at aka.ms/manage-windows-AI. Next, I'm going to hand off to Saqib and let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Kevin. It's amazing to get a chance to interact with so many people in the community. I'm Nazma Saqib. I'm a PM lead in the Windows security team focused on apps and agent security, which obviously has a big management angle. All right, I'll hand off to Adam next.
Hello, everyone. I'm Adam Braden. I'm a product manager on the Windows Developer Platform team, and I'm super excited to hear kind of the questions you guys have on what we're doing in Windows to help manage AI security. Matthew?
Hi, I'm Matthew Palco. I'm also a product manager over in the Windows security team with Kevin and Saqib. And so, yeah, very excited today to see everyone's questions and hopefully provide some insightful answers that'll help you guys understand how we're thinking about management and security within Windows for AI.
All right, thanks, folks. So our first questions come in, and this first question is, are agentic capabilities opt-in, preview only, or on by default? Who wants to start?
I guess I'll go with that one first.
Adam.
Yeah. The agentic capabilities are opt-in, meaning that the user has full control over whether or not their applications or whatever are using the AI functionality. To use the agentic capabilities on Windows, the applications do need to call new APIs. So not all applications currently do that. But every time there is some sort of activity, there's a user consent prompt or a toggle in settings that they can control to be able to enable or disable that functionality. As currently, there's a set of capabilities that are in the Windows Insiders release. And so that's where you'd be able to see our agentic functionality.
The other thing I would add to that is that enterprises can also control the functionality. And so it is opt-in for users, including enterprises. And so we have controls in the operating system to go and enable these capabilities. And then there are also MDM hooks to allow you to enable the functionality if you want to try it out using an MDM management solution like Intune.
All right, thanks, folks. So next question is, can we enable AI features for some users or devices, but not for others? And I'll jump in and handle that one because we worked on these controls for Ignite. So back in the Ignite timeframe, when we first had the Windows Insider builds where we were enabling some agentic features, we built a couple of controls that you'll see in Intune settings catalog that are designed for being able to turn on agent workspaces and agent connectors. This basically says if you first enable the features in general, so they can be, as we mentioned, they're off by default. You have the ability to go in and for different groups of devices or different users, you can easily be able to go in and turn off use of those features. These features are quite broad at this point. So basically, if you turn off, say, agent workspaces, you'll lose the ability to use any agents on the device, which again, may be a good thing in the situation where you want to have a higher degree of control. But obviously, if you're looking to experiment and understand what agents can do for you, the capabilities will be turned on. Over time, we'll be adding more granular controls that will give you the ability to do things that are more granular, like allow certain agents or certain MCP servers to be interacted with, the ability to interact with remote agents and those sorts of things to give the enterprise the fine-grained control that they may need to have. All right, next question is, do agents run as a user, as a service, or as a separate identity?
I think I can talk a little bit about this. I think today, agents run typically as the user, but it's really a combination of user and separate identity. I think Adam talked a little bit about how we have platform components available that agents can opt into, and that does allow us to run certain agentic functionality within a separate identity. We have some documentation that we shared previously about agent session and agent users, and so we can run certain agentic functionality isolated in those separate sessions and under those different users, but it does require some opt-in. So when we're talking about just a standard agent application getting installed into the user context, that today will run as a user, but we do offer capabilities that allow more isolation, and that's something that we're continuing to build on and trying to make more readily available for agents to take advantage of, so that as these agentic capabilities continue to advance, we have those sessions and user identities that we can use to attribute agent behavior to more clearly, and also provide a layer of separation for those actions so it's not directly interacting with the user session. So there's a layering of the user and the agent that we currently have today that we're continuing to try to invest and build upon.
I would like to expand on that, Matthew, just to highlight that, yes, most agentic activity today, like Claude Code or VS Code, GitHub Copilot, they are running in your user session today. And what we're building in Windows is a model that makes it easy for those applications to start up their agentic workloads in a separate session that's separate and isolated from you as the user in its own agentic session. And that's kind of the capabilities you're seeing inside in the Windows Insiders release. And so we're really trying to work with and encourage applications to adopt this new technology because of the security and isolation guarantees and the attribution that it provides to isolate, the non-repudiation of what did an agent do versus what did the human user logged in do.
Thanks, Adam. So next question, with recent news on how Microsoft is pulling back certain AI integrations, Notepad, et cetera, what changes will there be with managing AI on Windows?
I can take that one, Kevin. It's like we definitely hear the feedback from the community around Windows in general, places where we want to see improvements in the craft, improvements in the reliability. And so very much we're acting on that feedback. Now, the question we have is like, hey, what are we thinking about from a management point of view? I think the first question we talked about gets at an important principle. We know that enterprises need control, and so that control will always be there. So that's principle number one. Principle number two, we're looking for feedback from the community. We have already heard from customers that they want simple experiences. They don't want new management controls per se. And so a lot of the work that we're doing is on the Microsoft side, building on existing protocols, building on our existing products where it makes sense, like Intune, like the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. And so we want to make the experiences as coherent as possible and make it easy for enterprises to adopt. And so our principles continue to stay evergreen. We know that enterprises need AI management. We know that they would like to use the existing workflows and expertise that they've already built up using our existing solutions. And so we'll continue to build on top of that. And then we are on a journey where we have a spectrum of, at the moment, coarse-grained controls. We are going to be adding more fine-grained controls over time. And so a lot of the things that we're hoping to get out of engaging with the community is, how do we prioritize that roadmap for controls, especially as we build functionality in the platform and as others build applications on top of it.
Yeah, thanks, Shakib. One thing I would add there that I think is interesting feedback we've gotten to this point with a number of the customer connection programs that we have run, is that we've gotten feedback that Windows device management and application management tend to fall into often different groups within one organization. And so in some cases, it might make sense to service some of these controls inside of the Intune console or an MDM platform, while other functionality would best be exposed in M365. And so we'd love to get feedback as to whether you would anticipate managing agents on the M365 Admin Center side for being able to do things like permissions, be able to grant access for agents to talk to different types of servers in that sort of a context, or if that's a set of actions that you would anticipate being utilized inside of a tool like Intune for being able to manage policy for those interactions. All right, next question. So what's the recommended approach for managing agentic features across a mixed fleet, managed, unmanaged, and different device types? Anyone want to take a stab at that one first?
I was going to defer to you, Kevin, first.
Okay, all right. I had a feeling.
As a management expert, right?
So a couple considerations there. Obviously, AI is new and evolving at a very, very, very rapid pace. So what we're looking at right now is we get our first set of agentic features out the door. A lot of what we're planning for is managed devices where users are, in a perfect world, running a standard user. It's up to an IT organization to deploy the agents that are going to make sense for them to deploy, to turn on the servers that make sense for them to have enabled on the device, and be able to manage those permissions very, again, as we mentioned, granularly, saying which agents can talk to which servers. On a well-managed device with well-managed agents that have been built according to the guidance that we will be giving developers around the build timeframe, we feel like we have a very solid story for being able to handle the fact that IT will have a high degree of control in those scenarios. There are obviously unmanaged scenarios which are much more difficult for us to be able to manage. They're in a similar manner. If your users are running as administrators, it becomes easier for them to go and download whatever happens to be the hot new agent from the internet, install it on their devices, and begin experimenting. So the message I would give to most folks is in the well-managed scenarios, it will certainly be possible for you to have a high degree of control. But once you start moving out into places that might be a little bit more Wild West, where people have a lot of permissions to install software and manage that software on their devices, it becomes a little bit more difficult to be able to handle the fact that people will go out and find the latest new thing and try to investigate it. So across device types, that becomes, again, a little bit more challenging. We are very Windows focused right now. And so agentic management for this particular team is very much focused around the Windows platform itself. But once you start getting into the other platforms out there, we will certainly be looking at what policy controls might be available on iOS, Android, and other devices, and make sure that we are providing the functionality that are exposed through those OS manufacturers to be able to handle the controls that will be available. All right, next question. How should I think about permission for agent connectors and workspaces? What's the least privileged strategy?
I'll start and you guys jump in to complement, but the goal of agent connectors and agent workspaces is really to contain and isolate the agentic activity that you're trying to perform. Currently, that agent user session that we create for those agents is essentially, it's similar to a standard user account in that it does not have administrator privileges. In addition, we also prevent certain access to additional things, like it can't access your network shares in your intranet. And so we're really trying to make sure that the default security privilege of the agent user account that we're running these experiences under are limited and that you have controls. I think the other aspect that we have is not only the agent user account itself, but what resources does it have access to on your device. For example, with the file system, it only has access to its agent user account profile by default. It does not have access to your documents folder unless you specifically share a given folder to that agent user account. And so that's how we try to prevent the agent user account from having more privileges and more access than it needs, and more capabilities. I don't know if Matthew or Sakib, you want to expand on some of the capabilities model we're thinking about?
Yeah, a couple things I would add to that, Adam. It's like, over time we will add more fine-grained controls, like to constrain, like we have a particular default behavior today, for example, with file systems, and what's exposed to the agent connector and the agent workspace. Over time, we know that we need to add more configurability, and so that's something that we have in mind. And so it'd be great to get feedback from the community around what will be most valuable. How do you thread the needle between providing the controls that folks need without making things very, very complicated?
Yeah, I think one thing I want to touch upon as well, Adam was talking a lot about permissions, Steve as well. I think, when we think about this user, the separate workspace, this workspace shouldn't be able to do things that you as the user can't do. So the agent should never have any additional privileges or permissions that are greater than the user. So that's another principle we're looking at. And to the points that like Sakib and Adam made, we really want to start with the agent and the agent workspace having as little privilege as possible, and then allowing the user to enable privileges to enable the tasks and actions that are needed to get things done. So that's kind of how we look at least privilege. And, we're bringing more of those capabilities into the agent session to add that level of granularity to these different connectors and actions that we're enabling.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. So next question. Are AI agent interactions logged separately from user actions?
Yeah, I'll jump in and take that one. With the functionality that we built in the platform to run agents under their own separate account, and they have their own agent ID. And as a result of that, all the logging that we do in the Windows event log and our ETW events logs that ID with that agentic activity. And so that you as the user or the IT admin can go through the Windows security logs and the application logs and identify, what did that agent do on my device? What commands were executed? What agent connectors did it load? And really have that traceability or auditability in the platform.
Yeah, I think there's the platform side, and then Adam, you talked a little bit and touched a little bit about the agent side or the application side as well. I think there's also really there's a lot of logging that's available through Purview and Copilot in M365 today as well, where with agent identity, Entra agent identity, and having your application tied to that, and then Copilot generally, there's a lot of logging available to attribute agent-specific actions from a cloud sense. So, a lot of these agents and models are cloud-centric and running in the cloud. So making sure that we have a strategy on the Windows platform and being able to attribute local actions, but also, what is the application doing in the cloud? What resources is it accessing? What SharePoints and things, or is it touching? We have those attribution models as well. So both like a Windows to the cloud connection there to make sure attribution is clear across both platforms. And I think that's a really important part of the story, given how these applications span both Windows and cloud.
All right. Next question is, do we have any updates on how MCP on Windows is evolving?
I think the question might be better framed as like MCP on Windows is something that we've built and put in the preview channel, Windows Insider's preview channel. And we are currently trying to get all the security principles and features in place to fully support that end to end. And you might be asking more like, what is next after MCP? And so I think that's where we're taking a look at things like skills and how else do we continue to onboard the next set of important agentic functionality.
And I know that we have a couple of MCPs that are going to be more broadly available shortly. So I know that the file system MCP is one of them. I believe that the settings CSP is another one. Is that essentially the ones that we expect to see in the immediate timeframe?
Yeah, let me expand on that, I guess. There's 3 MCPs we're currently looking at supporting, one in the inbox and Windows. One is the files, settings, and search. So you can leverage your agents that integrate with the Windows platform will be able to all see and use those inbox MCP tools to further enhance their integration with Windows local experiences.
All right, thanks, Adam. So next question is, what's the best way to monitor or block risky AI-initiated behaviors?
I can take the first pass at that one, Kevin. It's a great question. It's also a complicated one to some of the things that Matthew and Adam were alluding to around the answers to the agent action logging. Really, as we've kind of made the transition from chatbots to agents, we're now seeing, the activity of an agent span the cloud and also your local device. And so when we think about monitoring, so observing what the agent did with logging, when we think of AI-initiated behavior, the action, like whether it's calling a remote MCP server to get data or changing a file on your system because you asked the agent to write some code on your behalf, there's a large spectrum of resources and things that you need to go and look at. And I think Microsoft, like the rest of the industry, we're rapidly having to adjust to how quickly the models and the applications built on top of them are evolving. And so it is a bit of a distributed story. I think the best solution that we have today around thinking about monitoring and regulating agent behaviors is a solution that we called Agent 365. It's in preview out of Ignite, and it shows you how the M365 agents today are behaving. You can set policies there. It's integrated with Purview and Sentinel, so you get the observability. The Windows platform is, going to be integrating with Agent 365 and controls like we have with Agent ID and Entra to kind of provide similar observability and governance. Naturally, you have many different types of agents, many different types of applications. The boundaries between applications and agents are kind of porous. And so solutions, traditional security solutions, like things that we have, like application control, they're going to be part of a strategy around setting up your endpoint in Windows securely with things like Intune, creating an appropriate baseline that you understand, continuing to use things like Sentinel or your SIEM to observe everything that is happening on your endpoint, and then layering on agent-specific solutions like Agent 365 to monitor what agents are doing and to set policies on the agentic behavior. But it's a rapidly evolving space. I think there are a lot of jagged edges in different places. And we definitely want to hear from the community on, what are the most painful pain points so that we can prioritize that on our roadmap.
Awesome. Thanks, Akib. Appreciate that one. So next question, how do you roll this out safely? Pilot design, rings, and criteria for broad enablement. And so I'm going to jump in and start that one off a bit. So again, as we've said a couple of times today, this is new and evolving technology. So what I would recommend is for folks to get involved with the insider preview builds, follow announcements that come in the build timeframe in a couple of months, but be working with the early builds that we have, look at the early controls that you will see in say the Intune console, where you can, again, have that ability to turn on or turn off agent workspaces and connectors, but begin piloting and getting an understanding about what these capabilities look like. Over time, you might expand to larger device groups. So move from some, maybe internal developer and IT related pilots and start moving into a line of business scenario where you've got this integration between, say Copilot and some of the applications that end users may be using, and use that as a means of understanding just, kind of what the impact may be of enabling agents in your environment. Over time, as we get the ability to look at telemetry, look at logging, look at data that is being accessed by agents, I think you'll have the ability to make decisions about when it's time to move into broad line of business and then broad enterprise-wide deployments based upon what you're seeing in terms of success, in terms of your degree of comfort with the way that agents are interacting with data within the organization, and use that as kind of the main way to be able to have this ultimately deployed in a safe manner. So I think we're coming up to the end of the session here. Please note that the aka.ms Windows Insider program gives you the opportunity to be able to get insider builds and be able to begin experimenting with these features. And hopefully that will give you an opportunity to be able to understand a little bit more about what AI can do for you. So I'd like to wrap up by saying thanks for joining us today. The Q&A will be open through Friday on the tech community. And next up is the Deploy and Manage Windows 365 with Microsoft Intune session. So thanks again, and hope everyone has a fantastic day.
Thank you.